So good afternoon. So I'd like to share with you for the next few minutes a story. My journey of finding that the greatest opportunity for overcoming some of the challenges that I see as a physician, as a researcher, is in dealing with and working with people with spinal cord injury and their families. When I was first asked to speak on this topic, it really brought up this video that I saw from years ago. And it made me recognize that historically, the questions I'm asked as a clinician are not new, but hopefully the answers may be. So let's see if this video works.
Brock, is it? Well, this condition, there must be some cure.
Paraplegia isn't a death sentence any longer. I'm happy to say that in this hospital, the mortality rate has been less than 3%.
I didn't mean that. I meant the spine injury. Surely there must be some way of healing it. There must be specialists somewhere who...
Madam, there is no method known to medical science for the regeneration of spinal cord tissue. None.
So this was 1954. The questions remain the same, but I believe that the answers are a bit different. I don't need to tell this audience, you're all here, you're involved in some way in spinal cord injury research. There is tremendous innovation going on in the field. We have work that's taking place in the acute models of spinal cord injury, of decreasing secondary injury and of enhancing axonal regeneration. And we have work being done in the chronic injuries in many different directions. And some of the methodologies used includes intravenous way of giving medications. We have intrathecal, right? We have subcutaneous. We have surgical implantations. And then we have these other neuromodulation, which we can spend so much time speaking about, and so many others, intermittent hypoxia, robotic exoskeleton devices, and brain-computer interfaces. There's so much taking place that both enhances neurologic as well as potential functional recovery as well. And yet, we continue to need to learn to help us better in the future. If I'm going to pick on somebody, I'll make fun of myself. So this is a study that we developed, and it's the use of the diffusion tensor imaging. It's an advanced type of MRI. And what we wanted to do is we look at the results from acutely after injury and follow the patients over time, and comparing it with both functional and neurological outcome measures. We thought this was a brilliant design. Right, we did an MRI soon after their injury, and then 2 weeks later, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months later, we compared it with validated outcome measures neurologically and functionally. Everything seemed great, right? And we had these beautiful pictures. I mean, they were so impressive. And we looked at the data, and so we thought. What was the problem? Enrollment was difficult. Retention was even more difficult. And what did I learn from this study? Well, one is the design sounded good, but it wasn't easy for people to come back and get all these tests. Second, we didn't really effectively communicate the relevance of MRI and DTI and all these advanced technologies to the patient and the family. And third, after a couple of visits, people were saying, well, what's in it for me? What am I getting out of this? What's the benefit? And I don't mean that in a negative way, but there's a tremendous amount of work for people to come in for follow-up visits. Now, we've had a number of recent trials, and we'll hear about some of those tomorrow. Dr. Guest will be speaking about them. And this isn't unique to a trial that I'm doing. We know that for many studies that enrollment is not what was expected, and retention was not what was expected. And even though there may not have been paradigm shifts from some of these studies, there's a tremendous amount of great information that we've learned. In terms of eligibility for trials, it's helped further trials down the road, and safety. But still, we recognize that there are some real main challenges that we have in doing clinical research, right? And I break them up into these 4 categories. It's relevance, study design, patient-centered outcomes, and enhanced patient buy-in and engagement, because if they're not engaged, they're not coming back. And this is really where the opportunity is, involving people with lived experience to help us come up with the best projects we can get. Now, it's important to recognize that as a physician, as a researcher, we have these different outcomes that we fall in love with. We think that they are just tremendous. And there's a little bit of a difference of opinion between those who are maybe developing the trials and those who are going through the trials. And I'll give you just a few of them. I won't go into detail. But neurophysiology. I love neurophysiologic tests, right? It's so great because it's objective methods to really study the nervous system. I don't have to worry about people saying yes or no. Do I feel this? Do I not feel this? It's a really objective measure, right? We have imaging studies. Pictures are amazing, and what you can see in MRI is truly unbelievable. And biomarkers. I had a great conversation with someone yesterday about the unbelievable studies of biomarkers. But in truth, there really needs to be some other tangible outcome measures for people to say, yeah, I get it. How is this really impacting me from motor, from sensory, from mobility, ADLs, activities of daily living? How is it changing my functional independence on a day-to-day basis? How is it affecting my quality of life? These are important. Now, from the clinical side, not only from the basic ones on this side, but we also have clinical measures that we have, and we fall in love with them, right? So many of the clinicians love to look at spasticity. We have validated scales like the modified Ashworth scale. It's a great scale. We have patient-reported outcomes, there's other good scales. But spasticity is so hard to study. It's dynamic in nature. It changes based upon a person's mood, time of day, weather. My gosh, we don't have this kind of weather in New Jersey that often in the year, right? It depends. And also, just because you've decreased somebody's spasticity on the time that you're testing them, what impact is it having on some of the other effects of the spasticity syndrome, on decreasing coordination, on improving their movement, improving their quality of life and function on a daily basis? Now, the most common outcome measure that people will sometimes use is the international standards. It's the examination. For those of you who've done it, know. And I'm not making fun of it at all. I'm the last one. I've been very involved in the classification for years. But it could be a lengthy exam. For people with incomplete tetraplegia, it could take up to an hour. We have 112 points that you're testing for light touch and pinprick. You have motor exam. You have a rectal exam. I don't know anyone that loves coming in to be transferred to the table to get a rectal exam, let alone the physician who's doing it as well. They don't love doing it. But I think it's more important to understand that outcome measures need to be more than just changing of an Asia impairment scale. And I'm not making fun of it at all. I think it's a critical scale, but it can't be the end-all be-all. If you take a person with a C5 level who's a sensory incomplete, and they regain a little bit of pinky movement, right? I'm jumping for joy as a researcher. The person moved from an Asia impairment scale B to a C. Unbelievable. But from the patient says, whoa, that pinky movement is not doing me a whole lot of good. And even if you take away from neurologic ones, we have the grasp, and I love the grasp. These are all validated scales, but they have to really impact daily life. I love this one, statistical significance. There's nothing more that will live or die from a researcher than the p-value being less than 0.05. But of what value does that really bring to a patient? Right? What does it bring to a person? And that is really where we have to look on this. Now, I go back I've been doing this a long time. The gray hair and gray beard may have given it away a little bit. But I remember when I first came into the field, basically what happened is you had these researchers who were moving from the animal model to the human model, translational research, and they said, this is the way we're going to develop the study. And the clinician looks at it and says, well, I don't think that's going to work. And they say, well, no, it's going to work. We're researchers. We do it this way. And then you realize that they say, whoa, we didn't think about that. Right, we didn't realize that the complications that can occur. And based upon those early experiences, the researchers and the clinicians realized, oh man, we've got to get together. We have to work on these projects together to develop something that's really going to be effective. So what happened? So this was really great progress. What happened is that the physician and researchers got together, and I can imagine the patient is hearing about this, and everybody's looking down saying, this is a great study, and the patient's saying, whoa, I don't know if this is, and then we did the studies and we say, well, we didn't think about that again, right? We can come up with great research designs. We could look at mechanisms, we could look at efficacy, we could look at safety, but it's people that have to tell us what outcomes really are going to be meaningful to them so that they will engage. So I'll leave you with a couple of points that I just wanted to mention. So this really incorporates everybody, and it's really highlighting some of the things that you just heard before and that you'll hear next from the next group of people. But we need to bring everybody, and I think that this, in the 4 big challenges that I thought that I presented to you, understanding, one, the relevance of research is critically important, because the relevance makes research more applicable. And if it's more applicable, it's more marketable. And if it's more marketable, there'll be more investment in it. Investment from outside people, investment from patients, investment from families, investment across the board. We need to improve designs. We need to truly understand what are the tolerable risks. All right, safety is critically important versus invasiveness of some of the procedures. This is really going to be helpful and critically important if our studies are going to be able to recruit, and we'll talk about this a little bit more tomorrow in my topic. We need to work together to develop patient-centered outcomes because they truly need to be meaningful. That doesn't mean we get rid of the other ones. It means that we join them together to make sure that we're studying something that makes everyone happy. And last, we need to enhance patient buy-in, because if you don't have people participating, the greatest study on paper isn't going to be successful. So I think that we've really made great progress from the 1950s to the 2020s and 2024. I think we have really moved quite a bit. There's so much advancement in just clinical design in so many different areas, but I think the next biggest step for us is going to be able to work together to overcome the challenges that we currently have to have successes for the future. Thank you very much.